Today I'm going to talk about the smallest command, the smallest invisible command. But this is the command that governs the whole of the cosmos, the smallest command in the universe. So it feels solid, it feels continuous, it feels smooth, it feels solid, continuous, and fluid. But what if I tell you that the deep beneath this apparent smoothness that we have, nature does not flow freely. It doesn't flow freely at all. What if the universe speaks? Universe speaks in steps, in quantas, but not in streams. What if reality whispers? You may act, but you can act in packets. You can act in packets of energy. And that whisper has a name. That dictation has a name. And it has a name of a number. And this number is called as Planck's constant. We talked about the other constants. It's a number so small that it hides from everyday life, yet so powerful that without it, atoms would not exist at all. Light would not behave as it does. The chemistry, the interaction between the atoms would collapse, and technology that we have would be impossible. Its value, if I talk about this number, its value is 6.626 times 10 to the power of minus 34 joules second. This is the value of this Planck's constant. At first glance, this number looks meaningless. It doesn't appear to have some meaning as long as the macroscopical measurements are concerned. But this tiny number is the boundary line, basically. It's a boundary line between the world that we see, the visible world, and the hidden world. So it is a kind of imaginal bifurcation between a visible world and an invisible world. Planck's constant is not just a number. In textbooks, we utilize it to calculate things, but it's not merely a number. It's a book of rules. I can call it's a rule book. It's a rule, a permission. It's a permission slip. Maybe a limit placed on the nature. Now let me try to explain, let me try to argue about it, and let me show you what that really means. what actually I'm talking about. What does it mean? Now, light feels continuous. If you take the feeling of light, it seems to be continuous to us. And switch on a bulb, okay, I'll switch on a bulb and the room fills with light instantaneously, instantly. It takes it as if it takes no time. But Planck's constant tells us that light is not released smoothly. It's not released in continuity. There's no continuum in it. Every beam of light comes in packets. Every beam of light comes in discrete energies. Every beam of light comes in discrete energy packets. And each packet of energy is called as photon. The energy of each photon is given by this. It's given by this simple equation, the Planck's equation. E equals h nu. E is the energy of this photon, h is the Planck's constant that I'm talking about, and nu is the frequency of this wave packet. And this equation is simple, the equation that I talked about, but devastating. It's devastating in its consequences. Now, why is it devastating? What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to pass? If Planck's constant were zero, let's assume that its value were zero, light could have any energy at any frequency. Any energy at any frequency. Ultraviolet catastrophe. But because H is non-zero, light it's sliced, it's in packets. It's in packets of these energies. H nu, H nu, H nu. This single idea explains why ultralight or ultraviolet light can burn skin while visible light cannot. Even if both are bright, the equation is telling me why. The brightness controls the number of photons. It controls the number of packets. And frequency is when multiplied by the Planck's constant, what we achieve. When we multiply the frequency by Planck's constant, controls, there's a controlled power. Now without this constant, radiation would have no identity at all. You couldn't actually classify it. Now, think about a heated object. Suppose we have an object, it's a heated object. It's red hot, very hot. A red hot iron. It glows, it glitters. A white hot star shines brilliantly. Now, what am I trying to tell here is, let me go back to the classical physics. The classical physics once predicted that hot objects should emit infinite energies at high temperatures, at high frequencies. They should emit infinite energies. And that seems absurd. That absurd result, I shouldn't call it, but I called it now, was called this ultraviolet catastrophe. Because it would take things infinitely to wherever the things want to go. But reality refuses. It refuses to obey that prediction. And why? And why it refuses? Because of the Planck's constant. Because Planck's constant enforces energy steps. It enforces energy in steps, in quantas, in packets. Oscillators inside the matter cannot vibrate with any arbitrary frequency. They cannot vibrate with any arbitrary energy. They must obey. They must obey to jump. They must jump in multiples of this h nu, the energy packet. This single restriction, it basically saves physics from infinity and explains why stars shine the way they do. Now let's go deeper into the idea. Let's go deeper into this thought. Let's go deeper inside an atom that we can imagine at least. Electrons do not spiral into the nucleus, even though what classical physics does, it predicts that it should lose energy because of accelerated charge. The electron is accelerating around the nucleus. And why don't atoms collapse? Why they don't collapse? They should collapse in the framework of classical physics as predicted by Rutherford, because Planck's constant sets a minimum action. It designs a minimum action. It marks a minimum action. The minimum action is what? The angular momentum. The angular momentum of an electron must occur in the multiples of the Planck's constant. Talking exactly in the multiples of h by 2 pi. This means electrons are forbidden. They are forbidden from certain motions. They are restricted. They are constrained. They are dictated. Planck's constant is not, it's not suggesting the possibilities here. No, it's not doing that. It's not suggesting the possibilities. It is forbidding the outcomes. Simply forbidding the outcomes. What? Atoms. Atoms exist. Atoms exist because the nature is told no motion smaller than this. You cannot have a motion smaller than this magnitude. Now imagine shrinking the universe. If we imagine a shrinking universe, a universe that shrinks as systems become smaller, the influence of Planck's constant, its influence becomes large when you are condensing it to the scales, to the atomic scales, to the nuclear scales. At atomic scales, this number dominates. No gravitational constant, even no electrostatic constant. This is why particles behave like waves in this framework. At this line, the wavelength of the particle, if we talk about because it behaves like a wave, its wavelength is given by de Broglie equation, lambda equals h by p, where h is the Planck's constant and p is the momentum of the wave. So what happens here? Momentum increases, wavelength shrinks. Momentum decreases, there's decrease in the momentum, and the wavelength grows. This is not philosophy. This is not a literal philosophy. This is a number. This is measurable. We can measure this kind of complementary behavior between the position and the momentum of the particle at the microscopic level. Electron microscopes work only because of this number, because of this Planck's constant. Because this constant allows electrons to have wavelengths far smaller than the visible light, and giving us the beautiful images, the images of atoms themselves. Without this constant, without this number, if we don't imagine this number, modern microscopy would be impossible. You won't be able to dictate things at the atomic states where you can talk about the beauty of surfaces of materials, the crystals. Now let's talk about the very beautiful uncertainty principle that's being dictated. We often hear that nature is uncertain, but that's misleading basically. It is misleading our understanding of the nature. Nature is not careless. It's not kind of careless. It is, I should say, it's precise. It is precise to a limit. The uncertainty principle. What it states, the uncertainty principle. Come on, it says that the uncertainty in the measurement of the position of a particle and its product with uncertainty in the measurement of the momentum of the particle is always greater than that of the Planck's constant, a reduced Planck's constant. This is not about the experimental error. This is not about the machine that you're using to make this kind of measurement along the same coordinate of position and momentum. No, you're not doing that. It is basically a fundamental restriction that has been imposed on the nature itself. Planck's constant fixes, basically, it fixes how sharply reality can be defined. You cannot pin down, basically. You cannot pin down the reality. You cannot pin down the position and momentum simultaneously along the same coordinate of the system beyond this limit. the limit that has been ordered to the nature to go with, not because of poor tools that we are using, no, but because the universe disallows it. The universe disallows it. Now, let's look at the chemistry, the bonds, the atoms, the interactions, the chemical bonds, ionic bonds, the bonds that we have. Why do atoms form molecules? Why does oxygen bind to the hydrogen in a very specific way, in a very precise, specific way? Why? Because, to answer this question, because electrons' energy levels are quantized by this number. Its energy levels are quantized by this Planck's constant. And that quantization leads to the only way the two atoms can bond. Chemical bonds are nothing. They are not the real ropes. They are nothing but electrons rearranging between those allowed energy levels, those allowed energy states. Now, if Planck's constant were slightly larger, now see, it's a barrier. It is setting that barrier. If it was slightly large, atoms would be highly uncomfortable. They will be highly unstable. They will be very, very unstable. Now, if it were slightly smaller, the bonding would be too weak between the atoms. Now, water, the important gradient for the biological life on the planet, water itself depends on the exact value of this Planck's constant. You cannot have water if the Planck's constant is not what it is. Now let's move into the technology. Let's go into the framework of technology. Now what we have, lasers, light amplification or stimulated emission of radiations. They do not produce ordinary light. What they do, they rely on a very process that's known as stimulated emission, where you have the photons trigger the release of identical photons, and assuming these all photons in the same phase. The energy difference between, if we think this way, that the energy difference between atomic states is fixed. It is fixed by the equation, the Planck's equation, E equals h nu. I can replace this E by delta E. The change in energy is h nu. Now, without Planck's constant, this equation has Planck's constant in it. Without this Planck's constant, laser would not exist at all. You cannot even have an artificial technological amplification of radiation. No barcodes, no scanners, no fiber optics, no internet. No surgery of eyes. We have laser surgeries where you fix the retina of an eye. No precision spectroscopy that we do in the laboratories. Every laser owes its existence. Every technological development owes its existence to this number, to this constant, the constant that's called as Planck's constant. Now consider the semiconductors. Now what we talk about the semiconductors, they are the building blocks of the modern technology. Your mobile phones, your televisions, LEDs, LCDs, they are all because of these semiconductors. Your phone, I'm talking about, your computer, it's built out of this semiconductor, silicon, germanium. Your digital life surrounding you, the tablets, the mobile phones, the laptops, iPhones, band gaps in materials are the reasons that silicon behaves differently from that of metals. It is that band gap. Now, because electron energies are quantized, they have to jump the packets of energy. That spacing between the conduction or the valence bands that we have, that spacing is governed by this number. That spacing is dictated by this number, the number that you call as the Planck's constant. Now change this number, change the value of this Planck's constant, and silicon may stop being a semiconductor. It will not behave like a semiconductor. It will not give you the characteristics, the way you want to model it, its characteristics. So modern electronics would vanish. It will have no existence at all. I'll not be talking here. I'll not be sharing here. Even timekeeping bows to this number. The timers, the atomic clocks, the most accurate atomic clocks that we have in the modern world, they use the transitions. They use the transitions between the energy states of an atom. And these transitions are dictated by the Planck's constant. So the most accurate clock that you have, it's working because H has this value. The frequency of these transitions is locked by that equation, E equals H nu. Now, your instrument becomes possible only for H having this much of value. And this allows clocks to measure time. And of course, it allows them to measure with accuracy better than 1 second in millions of years. See the accuracy of measurement of time. And its dependence is accurately on the Planck's constant. And we have GPS. The GPS satellites, they rely on this precession. You have navigation. Navigation works. How it works? It works because of the Planck's constant. Because this Planck's constant does not fluctuate. If it fluctuates, you cannot have the results that you're looking for. And now think cosmologically. Now think in terms of the universe. At extreme small scales, you are not shrinking actually the universe. You think about the same universe at very, very small scales. Space-time itself is expected to show the quantum structure. The space-time. We have the Planck time. We have the Planck length. And we have the Planck energy. They all arise by the combination, by combining this Planck's constant, this perfect number, with gravity, with light, with the speed of light. It's amazing. It's an invisible command. And this constant sets the stage where our current understanding of the nature must eventually give way to something deeper, to something precise, to something deep down. It seems to be the threshold. It is the threshold of the knowledge. So what is Planck's constant? And what Planck's constant is really? It's not merely small. It is decisive. It tells nature when to smooth, when smoothness must stop. It tells energy basically when it must jump. It dictates energy when to jump. It tells measurement when it must fail. And it tells matter how to exist, how to be there. Without this number, without Planck's constant, without this small number, there are no atoms. There are no molecules. So if there are no atoms, there are no molecules, there's no chemistry. There's no light as we know it. No technology as we have it. We're using it. There's no stable reality surrounding us. And yet, it works. It works silently. It works hidden beneath every interaction of atom. Unchanging, uncompromising. It keeps on working. It keeps going on. It keeps going on. It keeps going on and on and on. So, to conclude this invisible command, Planck's constant basically, it teaches us something profound. We can learn something from this number. What we learn is that the universe is not endlessly flexible. You cannot mark everything in the universe. There's no chaos in the universe. It is disciplined. There is decency involved in the universe. There is a smallest action, maybe a smallest step, maybe a smallest permission. It seems to be the smallest permission. Reality does not ask how much. It simply asks, what it simply asks is this allowed? This is how nature works at its deepest level. And that permission is written in this number, which is so small that we overlook it. We'll overlook it at the macroscopical level. But it's very powerful. It's very, very powerful in the microscopic world. Yet so powerful that everything that exists in this universe depends on this number. The number that I'm talking about, Planck's constant. Planck's constant is not just a constant of physics. It's a constant of reality. It's a constant of existence. It is the signature of the order at the deepest level of understanding, at the deepest level of nature, at the deepest level of cosmos. I hope you like this. Goodbye.